Welcome to the Sharpe Club, a little bit past 9 p.m. on the East Coast. And yes, I'm here yet again talking about what I think is a very interesting subject. But if it isn't, you will all lie to me and tell me it was. But I think it's an interesting subject, the idea of who should we look to when we are in crisis. And I think many people in this country would say, we're in crisis. Some of us individually for problems that we may be having with family, friends, addiction, depression, all types of things we may be having, to our family issues, to our communities that are struggling, whether it's with different crises that are happening from the government or other issues that are affecting us, to our nation that's having trouble and crisis, right? The ideas of what's happening now with the Rona raising its head yet again, right? All those things. Who do we look to now? And the hardest part is so many of us no longer trust either all or some of our institutions that I think if you go back several years, we would have looked to eagerly. I think now we often don't do that. And I have an excellent panel with me today. I'm going to kick it off with the returning champion, the man who is the dragon of the Southern Tier, a political commentator extraordinaire, the man himself, Michal Vass. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, and I'm really looking forward to this because I think the scope of it is so huge, and we have a good panel to really talk this out.
It is absolutely one. Yes, and now I brought in also a citizen journalist, a woman who I have seen on Twitter probably too many times, but that's okay. We will see her again, I'm sure. Woman herself. Hope I say her last name right. Kristi Talmadge. Was that right?
That is good. It's nice to be here.
Excellent. And we may be talking about the Rona. So I decided to bring on someone who is actually a senior scientist. I wasn't playing games. Lucked out. I was able to bring on the man himself, Mike. Is it Donio?
Donio?
Donio. There we go. Mike Donio. There we go. I got that right second time. It's okay, but I still got it right. Guys, I'm happy that you are all here today. Thank you for showing up.
No, absolutely. Always happy to be here.
The first thing I want to bring up is I think the first piece I want to bring up is the elephant in the room. I think I want to go right to it. The Rona is here again, according to the media. There's a resurgence now in COVID, right? So now I'll be demonetized. I said the word COVID would be demonetized now. So let's let it go. It's fine. So it has come back, right? And people now I live in New York City. I am seeing people now wearing the masks again. I see them back on again. People are scared. Mask mandate's coming back. The problem is, here's my worry. My worry is maybe it isn't this one, or maybe it is. But when something big or bad does come, are we so broken from the last couple of years that maybe we don't want to believe anybody, right? Who do we believe? Who should we believe? Doesn't even matter. I mean, this part is scary for me, not because of this. I'm not really scared of COVID. I'm not. But I am worried about the future, right? What's the next step? What's that thing? I am worried about that. Am I off here, guys?
Well, kind of. The fact is that we've lost our faith and trust in the media and in government for good reason. We've seen them repeatedly lie to us, they'll tell us one thing, and then 6 months, 2 years later, we find out the exact opposite was true and was suspected to be true at all times. We've seen them go out and demonize us for not, in the beginning, saying, well, masks don't work. And then 2 years later, UCLA, the WHO, the CDC come out and say, yeah, 1 mask, 2 masks, 3 masks, they really aren't effective. It's just about feeling good. The science doesn't support.
Well, hold on.
Claims. Go on.
It does show that if I put enough masks on, I am cooler than you. It does show that. I mean, I do virtual signal better than you if I put like 8 masks on.
Unless you pass out.
Right.
That's true. Yes. Yeah.
So I mean, the point I'm getting to is look at the question that's before us applies to not just coronavirus. I know we want to start there, but remember, we're also talking about immigration. We're talking illegal immigration. We're talking about national security. we're talking about inflation and finance management. We have several crises that are going on right now.
Yeah.
The Rona is just one of them. It's the one that's popular right now.
Yes.
Because of politics. And the answer to each and every one of them, I think, is we have to be more aware and less faith-based, government
hold on. You're
faith-based.
saying aware. Let me go to the scientist here. What should we be aware of? Like, who should we be paying attention to? Clearly, somebody. That's not true. In theory, I shouldn't say clearly. In theory, somebody should know what the hell is going on, right? There should be somebody that we can look to and go, okay, how should I be afraid yet? Like, at what point should I be scared? Should I ever be scared? When should I be scared? Is there something else we're looking to?
Yeah, I think we became way too complacent in terms of freely giving away our trust into quote unquote experts like the Faucis of the world, and putting less.
Hallowed be his name.
Yeah, right. The Science, Mr. The Science, trademark. And less into our own selves, and having confidence in ourselves to actually make informed decisions, to gather information, to understand these things. Hold
on, but let me walk down that road if I could. Let me walk down that road, Mike. So let's be realistic though. There's so many things for me to research or to look at. And not just that, I can go down a rabbit hole on YouTube and go down a hole for like 6 months down a hole if I wanted to. I could just go down a hole, right? I could do that. But most people can't do that. They have to work and take care of family, friends. They've got stuff to do, right? They can't do that. So don't I want to be able to just, go to somebody and go, and I have done this before. I've actually gone to Vass, say, Vass, what do you think about this? Like, I'll just go to him and say, what do you think about this? Because I know he went down the rabbit hole. So I'll say, I know he went down the rabbit. Let me ask him. And he tells me, okay, I got it now. Thanks. Right? Don't I want to have some people I can call?
Yeah, ideally, yes, definitely. I mean, because that certainly takes the impetus away and helps you protect your treasured resources, your time and your energy and all these things, right? I mean, then you don't have to sink as much. But we've seen, I think the thing we need to guard against is blind faith into someone that just trusting for the sake of trusting, because it's easier than actually putting in any effort ourselves. Maybe it's not just simply doing the research, but it's also building trusted relationships with people that so we know that that they have our back. I mean, too many people like the Faucis, I mean, they clearly don't have anybody's best interest except for their own at heart. So, I mean, they're, why would it matter what they say, really? They have so many other bosses that are way higher than you.
Yes.
Well, let me ask Mike. I got a question for you. You've worked for Merck, Schering-Plough. You're a virologist. So when we first started seeing data come out, and we initially heard from the WHO in Europe, their head, come out and say, okay, this approach isn't the best case. This is the last case. We're talking about lockdowns, talking about masks, and the experimental jab. And they said, this is the WHO, World Health Organization, and their European head said, hey, this is our worst last case scenario. And that morphed somehow in the United States into that this is our first and only option. And I think that's because of politics. Did you see that and say, oh, well, it makes sense because it's science? Or did you turn around and say, well, that's political?
I think there's two answers there. I think I saw a lot of my colleagues, my fellow lab mates and stuff that accepted that because they believed that they could trust that as science, as that the science backed that up. I didn't view it that way. I thought that it flew right in the face of what the science said. I mean, none of those things really made sense with respect to how you would stop such a respiratory viral infection and things like that, with the masks and all these things.
But hold on, let me bring this up. I hear this all the time. Alex brings up a comment. He says, some masks do seem to work. I thought, from what I remember, that if you did wear that, I'm maybe getting it wrong, I think it's the N95 mask,
yes.
if that's right, that yes. If you wear that mask, that mask actually could help. That's what I heard. I think Alex heard that too. Is this not true?
Well, those masks, in order to be effective, they have to be fit. So they have to be specially fit. You can't have facial hair. They have to securely fit, and they can't have any kind of some of them have like those respirator things on the front. So I mean, basically, they have to seal such that there's almost no way you could wear them for an extended amount of time and have enough oxygen to breathe, right? I mean, you'd have to create such a sufficient barrier that for the type of use that was being mandated, like you need to wear these things all day at work or whatever, or even, we were seeing like kids having to wear them doing athletic activities and things like that. Like,
okay, the lady is ready to
Kristi, go ahead. Please go, Kristi. Jump in. Go.
Now, beginning in, I think it was the end of January, beginning of February in 2020, when COVID first came reported out of Washington, out of a nursing home. I reported on it immediately and everybody ignored it. And I expect, have you ever played that game? It's an online game and a board game called Plague Inc.
No.
Yes, I know it.
Yeah, so you can watch how a disease can spread. So immediately I was like, close down the air. I was like, right, close it off. They didn't listen to anything, any of that, but they panicked people overwhelmingly.
Yes.
And from the beginning, and in Connecticut, it was a big deal in New York because we were one of the first hit. And it was the elderly. It was the elderly in nursing homes that were getting hit the hardest. And the whole time through the pandemic, I had to sit there annoyed with my Democratic governor and leaders who were pointing out the wrong statistics in the data sets to panic people. They did not put the point out there that these were mostly elderly people that were dying. They tried, Lamont came out there from the Connecticut governor, Lamont. He came out there and was like, little baby died. The little baby died from SIDS, not from COVID. So they they freak parents out.
What no one got, I want to bring this up real fast, Kristi, is no one understands that during the entire time, not one healthy kid died of COVID in the entire country. Not one. And people don't know that. Not one.
Comorbidities. It was called comorbidities.
At least two comorbidities. Every one of them every child that passed had at least two comorbidities, at least two, if not more. Some had 4, 5, or 6. But no healthy child, not one in the entire country, died of COVID. But if you watch CNN or MSNBC, they were dropping dead left and right, like 6 a day, 25 tomorrow.
One of my, I have a STEM degree and all my IT certifications. So I'm studying statistics because that's a thing that apparently most journalists don't know. And I'm like, they're lying to you with statistics. And I don't want people to panic. But this is how I became friends with the Libertarian Party. Because about 3 months in, Jonathan, who heads up the Connecticut Libertarian Party in I think it's the Hartford area. It might be New Haven. But we became friends, and he wanted somebody to cover his event with Aaron and, the guys that were running. And I was the only thing close. I'm a citizen journalist. And at the time I was new. I was the only thing close to a journalist he could get to cover his unmasked event. And I was like, I don't care.
Right.
Well,
I remember that, yes.
Well, think about this. What we saw almost immediately from the beginning is that, and Kristi's very correct, that there was a lot of fear out there.
Yes.
We were told that our children were massively in danger. They are statistically the safest group. If you're a kid, kids under 16 were statistically 0.001% chance of fatality. If I am remembering the CDC data correctly, and I believe it's exactly right. It may have been lower. If anything, I'm rounding up, not down.
Yep.
And so we had that fear, and we also know this was not just in the United States, because the WhatsApp scandal in the United Kingdom came out, and we had the same exact conversation with the British Prime Minister and his Fauci correlation counterpart, and they were having the same conversation. Kids were perfectly fine. They did the lockdowns anyway, just like here in America. Why? Because Fauci said so. So we had that happening, but yet,
man, it's compliance, Michael. They wanted us to comply,
and that's my point.
Michael, there was also a problem with the children. Like, I fought against this the whole time because I'm big into mental health, and one of the reasons is because I volunteer because I've struggled with it, and I watched what they were doing to the children, and I watched them withdraw, and I watched the stories about them becoming more suicidal, and this was catering to the teachers union. It had nothing to do with the kids' safety.
I homeschooled my daughter during the whole time. I took her out of school, and I homeschooled during the entire thing because it was prison. Her school was literally a prison, and I'm like, prisoners get more freedom than my daughter, so I'm bringing her home. But I want to kind of get off this topic for 1 second because I want to get to the most important piece, though. Okay, it sucked. They lied. I'm in. Nobody here disagrees with that. But now what? Like, who are we going to listen to now? Like, if the Rona's coming back, according they say that, should we believe they? And not just that, when they start saying you're going to have this and have that and whatever they're going to tell us that we have to do, which one, if any, should we listen to? When is it the right time?
Well, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, not everyone has Mike, a virologist, on their speed dial to be able to get the answer from him. But we could do, like, and the reason I was about to mention, I actually live streamed several of the protests that the news media in southern tier of New York refused to attend, as 1,000 people came out. And in that group, that was predominantly 25% of the people there were doctors and nurses. And I was actually live streaming, talked off the record as well, off camera, with several of the doctors who were afraid of losing their jobs, and they did, 34,000 of them.
I remember.
And they were telling me, no, the data isn't correlating and matching up with the real world. So what we need to do going forward is skepticism is a good thing. It's part of science. If I'm wrong about this, Mike, please correct me. But science is the eternal quest for a question. We should be asking questions. We shouldn't have blind obedience. That's why we said the world isn't flat. Copernicus was punished for that. He turned out to be right. Well, guess what? We were told the jab was perfectly fine and masks would make you safe. And it turns out that's not correct. Why? Because we kept asking questions. That's one of the most important things we can do in any crisis. Keep asking questions, get better answers, ask a better question.
Well,
Am I wrong, Mike?
Alex brings up one more piece if I could add one more. Alex says, in my opinion, the best route is healthy lifestyles. Now, why do I bring that up? Because everything you said, Michael, they all talked about, no one mentioned that. Like, no one said, hey, you could do these things, the masks and the shots and the whatever. And there's another option, which is also healthy lifestyle. And you remember this. Mike, you were in the Marine Corps same time I was. And you remember when they did nuclear biological chemical training for us.
Oh, yeah. I was the guy who did it.
There we go. Yes, so you know, right? Nuclear was separate. Chemical was separate. What was the most important thing for bio? Being in good shape so you could be healthy.
Yes.
They taught us that in the 80s. Yes,
adds to your survivability. Absolutely.
Yes, 100%. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Just, Mike, a side question before you answer what he asked you to answer is that I am one of the people that took the first 2 shots and a booster, not because I thought it was a good idea, but because in order to volunteer at the Homeless Outreach Center, you're serving a vulnerable population of the public, and you have to in order. And 3 months after I took my booster, I got sick, and I was like, no more. I'm done.
So I'm sorry. Go ahead, doctor, please. The good professor, please go ahead. Mr. Scientist.
Oh, yeah.
We've all asked you questions, and we just made you wait. So now we've asked like 17 questions. So now you have no idea what to answer. So answer all of the questions, please, now.
all of the questions.
Answer all of the questions now, please. So, but it goes down to the point I keep bringing up, which is really Now, who do we trust? Like, who do we look to now, right? We get that it's bad. We get they lied. And most people get they lied. Some still don't, but most have. But how do we handle it now?
Well, I think you asked, who can we trust? Can we trust them? Do we believe anything they tell us? I think the first question is, why should we trust them going forward? Like, where do they have any shred of our trust left after that? I mean, what? And if we answer to that we shouldn't trust them, then we've already closed that door, and then we have to turn elsewhere and ask, okay, who can we trust then?
Well, here's the piece that I brought up, right? When I actually did this, Desiree remembers this. She says if they had listened to Larry, the economy would have been much better off. And for those of you who are watching now and don't remember, back in March of 2020, literally like 3.5 years ago now, I literally did a 6-video series on what we should do, right? In March of 2020. And I expressed what New York State should do dealing with the COVID issues, with what I knew. If we look back now, if we did what I said then, and again, I was some guy, right, with what I knew, saying what to do. And what I basically said was, get the government out of the way to allow local communities to figure out what was wrong. The only thing you must do if you want to take the government benefits, which were things like, I was saying literally, remove all Department of Buildings requirements for people who want to sleep. Meaning that if you are afraid you have an elderly person at home and you still want to go to work, you should be able to sleep at the local, Knights of Columbus, the local American Legion. Right now, you can't do that. That's against the law in the Department of Building rules in most places in New York State. So open it up. You can sleep there if you want to, right? So you don't have to go home if you don't want to, right? I also said, no, get rid of all distilling rules. So that if people wanted to create hand sanitizers, they could just make it and sell it. They could do it. No sales tax for that. If you want to make a mask and no sales tax. I also said what you do is the website, the government website should say, here is what the government believes is correct, and have a serious list. Here it is. We believe this is correct. Told us by the CDC and the FDA, we believe this is correct. But also allow for others to say this is what they believe is correct. Here's what's correct. And each of them can create their own. They actually have it now. It's called the Health Wellness Seal, something like that. It's a private company that has decided what they think is correct. And I said, you put it on the website, and if you choose to follow this, you get a stamp. And I send out no, this is a good idea. You'll see why. Don't say, Kristi. I send out my people, and I don't punish you if you don't do it, but I don't give you a stamp unless you choose to do it. And now the communities decide whether they trust the stamps or not. And within 3 months, we would have known what's working and what's not. Who's getting sick, who's not getting sick, what's mattering, who's wearing a mask, who's not wearing a mask, who's following the guidelines, who's not. Now, within 3 months, we would have known that if we had followed my guidelines, and we would know what was working. What we did instead was force the government to force everything. We're staying on that for 2 years. We're staying on that no matter what, and that's how it's going. I would fall back to that again. I would say let communities figure this out. As long as they report back to the government, say, here's what's happening, we can figure out what's going on.
I was muted and being passionate. They had that information. They were just misreporting the information. I looked at the data set every day, and I was so frustrated.
What I'm saying is, if people don't believe the government, it's irrelevant. Now say the government did everything right now. Just all of a sudden tomorrow. I mean, that never happened. But in my fantasy world, I've just created, the government does everything like you say, Kristi, with all right. Nobody would believe them. So it wouldn't matter because.
So they are obviously not the people we turn to in a crisis right now. We need to find a community of each other, a community of dedicated citizens who are willing for change and moderates. You can't be far right or far left. I'm sick of this whole scenario. The majority of us are moderate, center right, center left, libertarian, choose your gig. But that's not what's going on in the system.
Hey, everyone must think like me, Kristi, or they are wrong.
No,
that's how that works.
Well, I have put a slight bit of pushback on that, Kristi, because the majority of people, let's be brass tacks, honest with everyone and ourselves. The overwhelming majority of people, no matter what society you happen to be in, pick whatever nation you want, the middle is dead silent, keeping their heads down and just doing whatever it takes to get through the day. That's true across the entire world throughout human history. the reason why we have the fringes is the fringes are where the ideas for the next breakthrough, the ideas for the way to cope with things, they're the leadership. That's where it comes from. It comes from the people who aren't just getting by. They're the ones who are willing to take the risk to go out in front and say, I have an idea. And you'll be judged harshly if you're right or you're wrong. The only problem, and that's fine, whether I don't care if it's extreme left, right, I don't care. The problem is that the government and news media in conjunction with them were actively silencing people because it didn't match their political agenda. The problem with dealing with crises today, and again, I mean, besides the pandemic, we're talking about immigration, national security, finance. The problem is right now is that we don't have another voice. We don't have another option. We have a political ideology. You're told to obey. And if you don't, you're going to be punished. And the problem with that is you never get to an actual solution on purpose because you're constantly wrong. Mm-hmm.
I like the libertarians I get along with, but we have two extreme political ideologies on the right and the left, and there is no negotiating with them. And
I don't agree.
I am one of the 44% of independents, and do you know, like Twitter is an extreme scenario for everything, but man, I get screamed at from everybody. I'm sorry, I didn't mean I'm like cutting off Mike Donio.
No, but the problem that we're having here, right, is that now this is right to Michael's point, and I guess to your point too, that now everything is becoming political. Mm-hmm. So what does my talking head say, right? Does my talking head on Fox say this is good? Does my talking head on MSNBC say this is good? And whatever my talking head says, that's now why I agree. Whatever. Whether that is COVID, whether that's the Ukraine war, whether that's migrants, it doesn't matter, right? What does my talking on MSNBC tell me if I'm left? What does my talking on Fox say if I'm right? That is now what I believe. And then next week, I was joking when I said, when I'm talking about virtue signaling. But I mean, that's part of it, right? I want to be part of my in-group. I want to be part of the cool kids. And if the cool kids wear a mask, I got to wear my mask because I'm the cool kid. Or if I'm on the other side of the cool kids, I can't wear my mask. I got to rebel, so I can't wear my mask. I'm a rebellion. And I think there's a lot of that, too, which has nothing to do with science. Like, people
I don't care what anybody thinks. I still want to hear from Mike.
Well, Mike, isn't the scientific approach the best one? And I'm talking about not climate, let's throw out the climatologists, because they are a compromised group. They've been wrong since 1958, and they're still running with the same premise, which is not scientific theory. If your theorem does not work based on empirical data, you create a new theory. Climatologists don't do that. They go with the same theory and just say, well, you just need to wait longer.
You making Vivek very happy right now.
Huh?
You're making Vivek Ramaswamy very happy right now. And
it's true. It's true. The data is the data. The data is the data, but if we're going with true empirical data, if we're actually looking at, here are the facts, here's a person who's looking for it, whether they're, and again, I go back to Copernicus as a great example because of that time, but we have, and I'm sure you know many others in science, where we have Einstein, another great example. On the extreme, someone who comes out of left field or right field, however you want to word it, and has this brand new theorem, and then when we test it, it's true. Isn't that the best way, Mike? Shouldn't we be doing more of that without the politics, without censoring people like we used to do back in the Middle Ages and the Dark Ages? Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, science at its heart, science is about asking questions. And once it gets politicized, once it becomes something that you can't question, that you must accept, I mean, it's become dogma, and it's been wielded as a weapon. I forgot who it was. Weapon.
I saw this someone say, he said, the second you censor, it's no longer science. Some talking head said that. He goes, the second you censor, it's no longer science, right? You have to let everything out there, and you let the garbage fall away, and the things that work stand, but you keep letting people throw garbage at it because this is stands, so it doesn't matter. It always stands. So you don't care that they're garbage at it because you're right. So who cares?
Mike,
Once
I
you
worked for
censor-
BMS and Pfizer. This is true, right? Like, this is the basics.
Wow. All right, let me do a little bit of admin. Guys, if you're watching this, talking about audience stuff, if you're watching this and enjoying it, then click the like button now. I'm clearly going to get hammered and shadow banned because of the topic. So please help me out and click that like button so we can get this going out everywhere possible. If you're watching this on Twitter, then retweet this right now. Literally click retweet right now or repost, whatever, re-exit, whatever it's called. Do the re-thing, whatever that thing is right now. Please do that. If you want your post to come to the top, you can. If you're watching on YouTube, you can just super chat it on YouTube. That always helps. You want to support the show directly, you can. Patreon.com/Sharpeway. $10 a month has me doing much more of this and less of actual working. I don't want to be doing working. I'd rather be doing this. So do that. Help me out so I can do that. And of course, more importantly, you have 3 people here who are giving us their time, who are showing us some love. So show them some love in return and follow them all on Twitter. You can follow the great Michal Vass at MV Consult. You can follow Mike at Mike. It's Donio, right?
Yep.
Mike Donio. And you can follow Kristi at Kristi Talmadge. You can follow them right there on Twitter, or just go to the description on YouTube and Facebook, and I put their links there. If you want to check them out, what they're doing, check their links out. They're all there. If you want to check it out right there also. All good. So let me move to the next piece if I could. We are worried about who to trust. We are political on who we do trust for many of us, even though Kristi's right. A lot of us have, the sad part is so many of us who are like Kristi actually stop watching talking heads now, right? So someone's on Fox or MSNBC and we never watch them, right? So we didn't even know what our talking heads are saying because we checked out. Worse is sometimes we check out so much that we don't understand what the mainstream's even thinking anymore. That's the worst part. We totally check out, right? But that's happening. So now we're talking about climate, right? We had the fires in Hawaii, and then the flood in California, right? And everyone's saying, oh, that's all climate. That's the climate killing people. That's all the climate. Who do we trust? I mean, Vass, I know you don't trust them. You already said that. That's clear. I got that. You're pretty clear about that.
The science says
but
something.
Let's ask the scientist. Who
Well,
do we
good.
trust on climate?
I want to hear from the scientists,
Oh,
but
yes.
is it not true that these electric companies who don't clear the brush under their lines, who don't keep their poles sturdy, who don't keep their lines steady, they cause half these fires, and then they don't put the proper water in them. So climate change, which the earth changes, and I see, here's the thing, and I try to explain to people, especially on the right and semi-center right, is that even if you're a left-leaning person and you want to get some support for your particular climate change solutions, is that if you tell independents and people that lean center right, and even sometimes a lot of right, that you're looking to clean the water, to keep safe, clean water. You want safe, clean soil and non-GMO foods full of pesticides, which is why they made them. Runs into the Mississippi Basin, into the Gulf of Mexico, poisons everything. If you want clean air, clean cities, you can support the EV buses because they don't blow all that diesel into the poor neighborhoods. There are things we can agree on, but you don't have to be drastic with all these solutions that just cost taxpayers money. And
No. So you're messing up, Kristi. If we just stop using plastic straws, it's solved. That's the problem. We would just stop using plastic straws.
That's not going to
it's
work.
solved.
No.
That's the issue. See, you just greedy and want to use your straw. If you just wouldn't use your straw, it'd all be solved by now.
Oh, Mike, go ahead.
Come on, scientists, help us out. Help us out through this one.
I'm not a climate scientist. I like to kind of stay in my lane, but I think we've just talked about with respect to COVID and how all of that was the data and everything was so badly misrepresented by those in power. I think the climate situation is an even clearer example of how they've really badly, intentionally maybe misrepresented the data. The theories have been disproven. With respect
But
to
Mike, hasn't the opposite happened though? If you poll people on the climate versus polling people on lockdowns, as an example, right? Most Americans were unhappy with the lockdowns, don't like the lockdowns, don't want them again. Most don't want. There's a chunk who do, and no matter what, but most don't, right? But if you go to climate, most Americans are like, oh my God, the world's ending. It's all climate change. Most Americans still believe climate change is 100% real. The agenda is not. You can see it when Vivek said in the Republican debate last week, everyone loved him until he said the climate agenda was a hoax. And everyone said at that point, nope. And they were following people. They were all like, no, boo. Right? So even the right, there's a substantial chunk of the right that 100% believes in this. What's going on here? Is this just they're better at propaganda?
Yeah, very, very likely, maybe. I mean, I think people maybe just have a natural inclination to want to, I don't know, protect nature, protect the environment. I mean, and then we falsely believe we're protecting, or well, I guess we'd rather the reverse or the inverse plays out with respect to COVID and stuff like that, where we want to protect ourselves over anybody. You know, we'd rather run around scared and worry about it. I don't know. I mean, it's a weird dynamic.
Well,
yeah, my gut here tells me that if you really are concerned about this, right? I'm not a Republican, but I get what Vivek was saying. He was saying the agenda is bad, whether or not you believe in climate change. I think that's what he actually was trying to say. He did not say that well. It came across if he's a climate change denier. I don't think he is, but he might be. But I don't think he is. What he was saying, though, was the agenda is BS. And whether you believe in climate change or not, I think that's a valid issue, right? If you actually believe that climate change is real and you're concerned, wouldn't you be trying to stop all these private jets? Wouldn't you be trying to end the military-industrial complex? Wouldn't you want to be trying to stop the military from using the largest pollutant in the world is the U.S. military? If you really believed it, wouldn't you be saying, let's shut the military down, stop fighting wars, right? If you really believed it, wouldn't you be doing all of these things that would have so much more impact on the greenhouse gases? Am I wrong on this?
These are the things you need to point out. Like, even I do national and geopolitical stuff because I enjoy that, but I do focus on my state as well. And when you look, you've got people, it's a very Democratic blue state. I live in Connecticut. There's super majority Dem everywhere.
I live in New York. I got you beat.
Okay, so we're there.
Yeah.
And we've got sewage plants in Bridgeport that they're going to take 20 years to fix. They're flowing sewage out, untreated, into the Long Island Sound. There are flesh-eating bacteria trying to kill you. They're killed like 3 people this year. And then they're like, come to the Oyster Fest. And I'm like, no. Like, they're not cleaning basics of stuff. And they're telling everybody else to do so. So if they're going to push and be politically obnoxious about it, like, first of all, I think we all agree about the environmental stuff, right? Like, you don't like a lot of.
No, we do not all agree. No.
Oh, she said no, and Kristi just froze up. She was like, I can't take
Was it something she said?
I didn't know my no was that strong.
Yeah, really. That was.
I think she just had a seizure, but she could not take your no. That was
okay.
She said, it was but Michael, because you disagree, but do you disagree with my point that if you actually care, you'd be focusing on these things? We disagree with what Kristi was saying. Where was your disagreement?
Well, there's a couple of fundamental problems to start off with. First of all, is the reason why it's called climate change now is because of politics. Because it was first it was global famine, then it was global freezing, then global warming. Now it's climate change. Why is it climate change? Because the climate always changes. It wasn't a scientific term. It's popular because of politics. It's easy to disseminate and no one can say, well, the climate changed. Of course it did. It's been doing that for millions of years. So we have a deep infusion of popular politics into what we're seeing in the science, and the science isn't matching up. So fundamentally, we're starting off with politics, not science. Let's go further with that. Climate change is not a United States. It is not a first world problem. Let's deal with that. The United States reduces more carbon dioxide, which is not the leading factor of global warming as they claim. It isn't. It's actually methane is the biggest problem, followed by sulfates. But what we hear is carbon dioxide. Well, the United States reduces more of all of the greenhouse gases than all of Europe and the United Kingdom combined by 3 times.
And
We are the best.
by the way, New York State has the lowest carbon footprint of all the states. Just
Absolutely. Well, think of this. You could take New York State, and New York State is better than most of Europe. That's how well we have done. We are the example of the solution that the left keeps telling us we got to go further and further. That's because of politics. It's because of who's getting paid off. China and India and the continent of Africa are the problems. So if you want to really fix it, you don't have to worry about the United States. We've already done that. Go to the problem, not keep beating down on us. And the solutions they've got are, they want to talk about, we're going to fix everything. Forget about the planes that they have privately. Forget about their mansions that they have the electricity on 24 hours a day. Forget about all of that. Okay, ethanol is deoxygenizing the Gulf of Mexico. Actually, wherever there's ethanol production, the oceans are dying. The plants, the animals, they're dying. We've known this since 2006, as I recall. If you use solar panels, they're poisonous to the earth, and they have a roughly 7 to 10 year turnaround time, and then you have to put them in landfills that destroy the land. Same thing with wind turbines.
Yep, same thing.
So the science, and Mike, you're the scientist. I know it's your field, but good.
Let me touch this piece. In New York City, there was a period of time for I've got 2 years or something, when they weren't recycling anything. They didn't bother telling anybody. So we were still doing the recycling stuff, and they were still giving us tickets for not recycling correctly. They were still using it as a profit center, even though I think it was like 2010 or something. I forgot. It was back about 10 years ago or so when New York City just stopped recycling. Couldn't do it. It was too expensive or whatever, right? But they were still charging us and doing it. And when asked why, they said, well, we didn't want you to stop. We didn't want to break the habit. I'm not joking. That was the response. We don't want to break the habit. So we will keep punishing you, wasting your time, money, and energy, and fining you, taking your money away so you'll have a good habit. And I'm not joking. If anyone's doing your homework, you can check it out. That actually happened. And I feel like that's a lot of it. It's the idea of training us to be worried, training us to do as you're told. A lot of I keep feeling it comes back to compliance, and they use it. I'm not a conspiracy theorist where I think that the government is planning all of these things. I don't believe that. And some people do. But I believe that when the government sees it, they act. Oh, good. Again, another chance. Good. Oh, another thing. Oh, why can't you? We'll use this too. Like they want to use it every time for more compliance. Kristi, you're jumping out of your skin. Please go ahead. Oh. You're muted.
Muted.
I can't hear you. Hold on. I think your mic did not come in when you came back in. So try to fix your mic. Go ahead. Mike, I'm sorry. Scientist Mike, please go ahead.
Yeah, just call me Vass. Go ahead.
Yeah, there we go.
Go ahead, Mike.
You're not there?
Sorry? No, I'm here.
No, I'm saying go ahead. We've just been yapping away. I don't mean to just keep going. Please go ahead.
Oh, I gotta remember where we were.
Well, we were talking about.
He was just enjoying the conversation. I love it. That's awesome.
No, we were talking a little bit about the climate change and the difference between the data and the policies. And it seems like policy is pushing us more and more into compliance rather than actually helping us with the crisis they claim is going on. Is that a fair thought?
Right. If you actually wanted to fix the thing, you have. Oh, you're right there, Kristi. We got you. We're good. I hear you.
You got me?
Now you're back.
So what I was saying was, I feel like the policies we're coming up with aren't actually meant to solve the problem. They're meant to gain compliance. Like if you actually cared, you'd be doing different things, wouldn't you?
Absolutely.
There we go. Kristi, go ahead. You were jumping out of your skin. Please go.
I kind of lost track of where I was, but I really just wanted to say that it's important for people to be able to speak their point of view
Yes.
without feeling like they're going to get threatened or ostracized for it. Like, you don't have to agree.
Definitely.
I grew up, I have opinions. I grew up around science. I am not a scientist, but I am a logical thinker. I have a STEM degree. And there is no reasoning with some people. They are so angry and emotional,
Yes.
and they've been lied to by various media. They are not trustworthy. They have been lied to by various media and so-called scientists again and again. And they don't know how to react.
Well, I think it's a valid point, right? What happens if, this is the part that always bothers me, right? What my policy was to help with COVID was no government force. It was government allowing communities to figure things out and allowing government to change and shift. But once you use force, I can't really come back anymore, right? In other words, if I say, hey, Mike, it is my opinion that you should do these things. And if you do, I'll give you a star. And if you don't, I'll leave you alone. And as I change, I'll show you what I'm changing, that kind of thing. Then Mike goes, okay, Larry, thank you for your opinion, but I'm going to do what I want. Or maybe you go, yeah, I agree. I'll do it. Fine. You pick, but you choose, right? Whatever you think is appropriate. I can now change my opinion now because I'm saying, as I figure things out, I'll change my opinion and you can change yours. Now we have a back and forth. But if I don't, if I go, no, Kristi, this is the way. These are the 5 things, and that's it. If you don't do them, I'm going to hammer you. And if I hammer you now, I can't change. Because now when I hammered you, I was wrong. I can't back down because I was wrong.
Forgiving and open, but I really want.
But you know what I'm saying? As a government organization, I can no longer back down.
And that is the problem. That is why you can't turn to the government in a crisis anymore because they are not honest. Mm-hmm. Mike, I want to know how you feel because you are the scientist. I've been shut up so many times just for studying data. I'm not a doctor, but I'm a data scientist and an accountant and all kinds of other stuff because I'm a geek. And I looked at this stuff. I voted in 2020 for president. I wrote in the ASP party candidates.
Oh, yes.
And
I interviewed them.
And the reason I did that was because they were the only people focused on the elderly in nursing homes. I was like, whatever.
By the way, ASP is the American Solidarity Party. I actually interviewed their candidate. I interviewed their candidate on my show. Yes.
So, Mike, I just want to hear so much from you because I can't imagine how much crap you took for being honest.
Well, one of the things that bothered me the most throughout all of that was the way in which scientists like myself and doctors lorded their expertise over people and said that, because you don't have a certain credentials or degree or whatever, that you not only can you not understand this, but you're not even allowed to enter into the discussion.
Right.
And I was like, whoa. There's a huge difference between being in the lab, like I was having 20 years of experience in the trenches and just being able to be conversant in this. And plus, if you have a stake in this, which we all clearly do, how do you not have a say? Right. Yeah, I probably don't want the novice in the lab. I'm with you on that one. Right. I don't want him in the lab. But they get to have an opinion.
Well, Mike, is it fair to say, and I've said this to people, but maybe I'm wrong, that no, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, but I can read a scientific report, I can read a doctor's analysis, a critical or clinical analysis, because I understand English. And I can look at the data and maybe even pull out a thesaurus, a dictionary for the words I don't know. And I can understand and make at least a layman's a well-educated decision based on the data. Isn't that the way science is supposed to work? Or am I wrong on that?
I absolutely believe you and believe you can. But, there are so many people that look at goof crap and conspiracy theories that they will not listen to people with different ideas anymore. And I think it was organized by the system. It's like, this is what we tell you. This is what you must do. And anything else is crap.
That's how science works. But I'm going to go one step further, which may sound crazy, but you have every right to not believe any scientist to make bad decisions for your life. right? You have the right to do so.
Yes.
If I love you, I will ask you not to, but that doesn't mean you won't, right? And what I bring up is when this first came out, we're going back to we're going out of climate change and back to the Rona. When the Rona first came out and all the old people were passing away, I was scared for two people in my life. I had two people in my life who were over 85, and they both had comorbidities. So I was scared for them. I thought, oh my God, this might actually kill them. They're over 85. They have comorbidities. One just got off of chemo, and another one actually had diabetes. So I was like, okay. And they were both on prescription drugs for other things also. So I was like, okay. I was scared, right? So I asked them both to not go to church. Where my family's all a member of the Greek Orthodox Church, and we were going to go to church, and I asked them not to go. And they said, okay. But to be full with you, if they would have said they want to go, I would have driven them. I would have, because I believe they have a right to do what they feel is appropriate. I feel if they felt their faith and their connection to community was that important, and they would have risked their lives, I would have said okay, and I would have done it. But I was scared, and I asked them not to, and they didn't. So, but if they would have, I would have taken them because it's still their life.
I am a quarter Greek, 70% Italian, and whatever else is a mix. And I have a lot of Jewish friends. None of my religious family skipped church. It was like taboo, and they were angry when they were asked to.
Yes. Mine weren't angry because they knew I cared. So they weren't angry. And they actually believed they were kind of scared too. So all I'm saying is people deserve to make the mistakes if they want to also. It's still their life, right? It's still their life. Am I wrong on this?
Well, yes, people get to live their lives. Let's go back to the core of the problem, which I think, and we've already seen how this applies to climatology, which has flawed science, but lots of politics. We've seen this in our approach to the pandemic, which had flawed science and a lot of politics. Whenever we see a lot of politics superseding clear data and conversation, because we had a lot of people who were silenced, and this is true in climate debate. It's clear in what we're seeing with the mandates that are coming back. Mm-hmm. The question is, who do we trust? Where do we go for this? And I think the one thing, and I've heard Mike say this, I've heard Kristi say this, you and I know we both have dealt with this. Research. Do the homework. People go, oh, but I don't have the time. The average person in America watches 8 hours of TV. That's separate of the weekend when they go out. Not only do they watch TV, they go out and watch a movie, which is roughly about an hour and a half to 2 hours long. Plus, you go out to drink, you go out and have your meals, and you meet with your friends. There is more than enough time. People can take an hour a day to find out more data and to become educated so they can ask the right question of the politicians and of the scientists and doctors and say, okay, it's not blind faith, because if I'm blind faith, I don't know what you're doing. And I'll use the example of the death.
Let me push a little bit here, if I could. And the push I'm going to give you is, it's not just politics. If you want to look and know who to trust, it's the people who are not making money off it. Because politics equals money, right? That's why they care about politics. It equals money. Yeah, Mike, you live in New York with me. You know the amount of money these people are getting for this green agenda. They are getting literally billions of dollars for the green agenda in New York State. I mean, billions, which is why I don't know if this works in your state, Kristi, or on yours, Mike. But what happens is when they want to put solar panels, or when they want to put some kind of or when they want to put windmills up or wind turbines up, what they do is the government goes, yes, gives the contract. Then they go to the local area and they do what's called public comment. So the public can say, we don't want it. We don't want it. They nod a lot and ignore it. Yes. Oh, Kristi, so your state too. Okay. That's how it works.
I wanted
to nod and ignore it. Yes. Go ahead, Kristi, please go ahead.
Okay. So I did this crazy thing in 2018 and 2022. My bipolar took over my decision, but
Oh,
that's
this could
not
be
really
bad.
what it is.
But it's also fun. So go ahead.
My mom has been friends with Joe Lieberman since I was in high school, like
Wow.
good friends and all through high school. She did the hair and makeup show at the DNC for the Al Gore Lieberman convention. He invited her to the next one as a guest. She got to wear the ball gown.
Okay.
And he used to come. I used to hang out in her hair salon. He used to come about once every 2 months. And I'd sit there, and they ignored me because I was a teenager in high school. But I used to listen to them yap. And he is truly a moderate. But he told us all the dirty secrets about politics. And it's really an it versus them mentality. And he tried to reach out.
Yes,
But
I remember.
This politics has become so partisan between progressives and far right that people like Lieberman, even in the early 2000s, couldn't win an election. He could not win the primary. He had been a Dem senator who could reach across the aisle
remember.
for years in Connecticut. And they picked Ned Lamont, who is now the governor. But Lieberman went as an independent, and he won the election. And that's what we need. We need the opportunity for
I'm agree on third parties.
People.
I'm going to agree on third parties. So let's just be very clear what you're saying. It's all Vass's fault. Correct. I agree. It's all his fault. Totally agree. Yes.
I think Voss and Mike are wonderful. I'm sorry if I've spoken too much.
No, it's perfectly fine.
That's good.
And I don't. A lot of people say it's my fault, but what we're looking at, and I see the question that's being asked a lot in there, and I think this is also implied in this question of how do we deal with crisis? Who do we go to in crisis? And I'm saying research and saying have conversations. It's one, exercise your First Amendment. Two, when I say do research, people say, oh, there's too much out there. No, there's not. It's just you've been trained not to. People say, well, most people just read headlines. That's a choice. You can read the article. You can go and take the study and go and look up the study because, and Mike, you can confirm this with me, most peer-reviewed papers, journals, will have a study or at least a synopsis of the study and the basis of the study so that you can see it for yourself. You can get the information. You chose to watch another rerun of Friends, or you wanted to watch the Housewives of wherever the hell, or, moms dating their sons on an island. This crap actually exists on TV. I just had a friend tell me about it. And you chose to watch that for an hour and a half or to binge it all weekend long rather than actually taking 15 minutes, read the synopsis. It's out there. Who do I trust? None of them. But I can read 5 different articles. I can read 2 papers and a congressional bill in one weekend. And now I know, okay, now I have a better understanding. Am I wrong, Mike? This is why they make peer-reviewed papers, right?
Right. I mean, the information is absolutely out there for people to obtain if they so desire, and if they're willing to put the time into it. If you're willing to turn off the TV and actually invest the time in it. And I'll be the first to tell you that, I mean, yeah, like I don't expect that anybody's going to be able to figure out how to go in the lab and run experiments and do things at that level. But I mean, to be able to just get enough of an understanding to take away the important things and actually look at it and say, do I believe this? Does this make sense? Does this add up? Do I, absolutely. And anybody can learn. I mean, sure, there's a fairly high technical barrier, right? Science has a pretty significant jargon associated with it that becomes its own language, like legalese and a lot of different industries that have their own jargon and such. Science is very well known for that. The terminology is a significant barrier, and
law too.
But I think that can be taken down, and people can, that information can be accessible to anyone. I mean, absolutely. But you're right. It's about making the conscious choices of what am I going to invest my time into, invest my energy.
But it's also about making smart information available. You are a very smart man. And
what resources can I trust? Am I just going to go, and look at something
Dave
that's funded
says, I thought Biden found the cure for COVID. No, he found the cure for cancer, Dave. Get it right. He
Right.
found the cure for cancer. It wasn't COVID.
Yeah.
He's cured cancer.
Moonshot,
already.
right?
That's what he cured. Yeah,
I
he's already done it already.
after
Yes.
my first booster, 2 months after I got it, and there wasn't a damn test to be had anywhere near her. I was like, F everybody.
I gotta tell you, I felt terrible when it came to getting the shot, right? So, because I couldn't get into any buildings in New York City. I'm a consultant, and I couldn't get into any buildings in New York City without getting a card. So I got the first jab so I can have the card, and I forgot the second jab. Just forgot it. And so, but I had my card.
Our Libertarian Party in Connecticut, and it was my fault because I suggested it to Jonathan, was the fake cards.
Well, that was my issue. See, I didn't want to get I considered a fake card. I did consider one, but I thought in New York City they'd probably put me in jail for it. I thought literally I'd go to jail for it.
Threatened to put people in jail.
Yeah, so I thought, you know what? I don't want to have a fake card. I'll just have a card that no one will look at because no one checked for the second shot. No one checked. They just, oh, you got a card. That's all. It wasn't because it worked. It was for compliance. So me showing the card said, oh, you have complied.
Really,
therefore, we will let you into the building because you've complied.
This is why I voted. It was a rare choice for me to write in the ASP candidates. But they were the only people willing to help the elderly in the nursing homes. And that is what the majority of the death and sickness issue was. They did not need to lock everybody down. And it was insane. Yeah. They wanted your passport.
Yes. Total compliance.
I got the 3 shots.
Let me talk to the part
that was ridiculous.
That scientist Mike brought up here. I think there's a way we can get around this to make both Vass and you happy. And that is, in today's world, there's enough science podcasts, science shows out there to where you could pick 2 or 3 of them that you trust, and they're gonna touch the issue because that's how they make their money. So they're gonna touch the issue. So you go to 2 or 3 science podcasts that you trust, listen to their view on whatever the thing is, whether it's climate or COVID or whatever, and listen to it while you're doing your dishes or while you're, playing a video game or whatever you're doing, right? Listen to the podcast while you're doing something else. This way you don't have to be like Mike when you actually have a life and not just always study. You can actually do something else with your life. And you can do that. And then you can still listen to that. I think in today's world, with the amount of podcasts out there, I think you could still do it.
Can I just say, we've had a lot of discussion during this session on COVID and the responses to it and whatever. But in general, I would like to see us all find a more middle ground with more transparency, because I cannot tolerate
I like transparency
contest again.
Well, look, let me move into another piece if I could, though. And this piece is, well, before I go there, let me do a little bit of homework I'm a little bit of admin if I could. Guys, if you like this show you're watching, please click the like button. You know it's getting shadow bans because of the topic, so just hook me up. Do the like button, as many likes as you can. Click like 4 times. Whatever, click as much as you can. Doesn't matter. If you're watching on Twitter, please, right now, please retweet this, right? Did we get to see the dog?
Yeah, it's my puppy. Sorry.
No worries. It's all good. And please, you can super chat this right now if you want to get your chat to the front. Absolutely. And please follow the 3 people here who are giving us their time. You can follow Mr. Vass at MB Consult. You can follow the good scientist at Mike Donio. And you can follow Kristi at Kristi Talmadge, all on X or Twitter, whatever it's called now. Or you can head over to the YouTube page or the Facebook page, and their data is right there for you to check. If you want to check out what they're doing and how they're doing it. But I want to do a separate piece, Chris. And I think this is kind of what you're talking about. I want to go to even a smaller level, and that is community. We don't really trust our own communities anymore, right? Particularly if we live in cities. We don't even know the people in half of the cities nowadays. That's even worse, right? I mean, I'm an oddball. I say this all the time. I live in Queens, and I actually know my neighbors. But I know my neighbors probably because I ran for office also more than once. So that could be a reason why. But I know all my neighbors, right? Like I know the guy who owns the deli. I know his family. I know all the people in my neighborhood. I know them. But most people don't. Like I'm the oddball in my neighborhood. Most people like in my neighborhood talk to me, but they don't talk to each other. you'll find that
know
I'm the center.
I know most people in my local neighborhood, especially the people that make pizza.
Oh, I like that. You're thinking.
Yeah.
My mom, see, I lived on the shoreline of Connecticut when I was younger, and my mom lived in Manhattan and in Brooklyn. So I spent a lot of time down there. So I don't even need to explain to you how an Italian works.
No, I get it. But my worry is, though, we don't look to our communities for support much anymore. That is my worry, that we look outside of it to government when we should be looking local and community, and we don't do it as much as my
There are not enough volunteers, like even in Bristol. I volunteer at the Homeless Outreach Center. And basically what we do is we invite all the clients in, and we don't call them homeless, we call them clients. So they come in and we give them lunch, a hot lunch, and food to bring home to last for the rest of the night, clothes, jackets, anything they need. But we are running so low on resources because this is all volunteer work. We don't get money from the state. It's all volunteers. It costs like $300 to bring a meal in every day. When
one meal?
Volunteers, because you're feeding 60 people, and we don't have any.
Oh, so that's 60 meals.
Yes.
Okay, that's not one meal. That's 60 meals.
Yeah, it's for the whole group.
That's good. Okay.
But that happens every day, and the state doesn't help us. So if we don't get help one day, people don't get anything.
Good.
No.
Good.
No. Wait. See, I knew it said that it was going to be misunderstood.
Yeah.
Good that the state isn't involved. We don't want the state involved.
Okay.
I
Agreed.
The mentality is, well, the government will figure it out. They'll help us. They'll fund us. Get them out.
Hold on. I have an accounting major, and I am trying to manage your money. It costs a lot more to put these people in an emergency room to get care of their basic medical needs when you do not pay for the basic healthcare preventive stuff that they have. It costs a lot more to put these people in an emergency room when they haven't eaten and they've passed down the room because you have not fed them. It always costs you a lot more. I'm not trying to cost anybody more money. I'm center.
I understand that.
So hear me out, Kristi. Kristi, hear me out here. All right. I had a plan when I ran for governor, and I said that what everyone should do at the end of the year, when you're going to write your check to the government or your taxes, anyone, if they want to, can take $250 they were going to send to the government, but they can instead send it to any nonprofit in the state. If it's local, if it's in their county, it doubles to $500. And you might say, well, $500, what's that? When 1,000 people do it, when 10,000 people do it, that's a lot of money.
Well, here's the trap. Half these NGOs are crap.
Well,
correct. And here's why they're crap. Hold on. Here's why they're crap. I'm going to tell you why. Because half of them are government sponsored. So they have to have all of the government sponsored numbers, ideas, rubrics, all of that stuff. And that's what don't work. So yes, Michal Vass is correct. When you remove the government, they become more effective. That's exactly correct. Yes.
And that's
what I'm sorry, Vic. I'm gonna shut up for like 10 minutes so y'all can talk.
No, you're not.
But my question is, what are you gonna do about the people that fall through the cracks? And what is going to be your excuse when something bad happens and you don't?
Okay, two things. This dystopian world you speak of is today.
Yeah.
It's not like we're waiting for that to happen. Right. That's today. So let me ask you, Miss Government, what's the government doing? Not a goddamn thing.
Well, no.
Yes.
Let me address, because I brought it up, and here's the thing. There's always going to be there's always going to be someone who's going to fail. There's always going to be someone who's going to fall through the cracks. There's always going to be someone who's going to reject any and all help that you may give. There's a percentage of population that's always going to do that. I don't care about that. That's out, because I can't change that. We're talking about what we can change, what we can affect. And I agree. Being direct in the community, addressing things. I'm an advocate for the homeless. I've done a lot of volunteering that I don't put my name on because my politics is attached and therefore would cause a problem. I understand. We can do this, and we're more effective when we do this individually, whether it's going out to the local VA VA and making pancakes so they can go out to the homeless, or going to colleges and telling kids about what homelessness is, it's better. The problem is people aren't involved. Now, most people outside the cities do know each other, and they do know their communities, and they don't actually move forward because they've been trained. Well, the government's going to do it. That's why I pay my taxes. The government's going to step in, except the government is spending the money in the wrong place. Again, the answer to the crisis starts initially with us. Self-accountability, self-responsibility. What am I doing? Am I reading about the issue? Am I finding sources that I believe and trust that make sense based on the facts that are available? Am I electing the politicians who are responding to the issue, responding to my statements, my questions? Am I funding the NGOs, or am I funding a nonprofit that actually is in my community, that is actually working? Am I reaching out to people like Mike, who has expertise to get some valuable insight, if at all possible? It starts with us.
More from Mike, because I know we're overly loud people. Our political people tend to be over loud.
This is good. Alice brings up the most important point. She says, we'll need to work together. And that's exactly the right answer. And what I will always say, you'll hear me say all the time, when someone's in trouble, the first thing they need, no matter what the trouble is, the first thing they need is not a program or money. The first thing they need is somebody who cares.
Exactly.
That's the first thing.
100%.
Once you get that, now you can figure out what's the problem now? How can we handle this? And NGOs that are run by government can't care because that's not part of the rubric. They can't. It's not part of the rubric. It's not part of the checking of the boxes that the government makes you do when they give you a check.
I've been personally tortured by the Red Cross. That's not somebody you want to donate money to. Donate blood,
I had the same situation with the VA. Right, I support veterans, and I've literally had to not work for the VA. I've had to go work for like the Yellow Ribbon Fund and other places like that to support veterans because the VA had so many rules, regulations that were ineffective. So, Kim says NGOs have zero accountability. If they're government run, yes, she's right, because the punishment for failure for a government organization is more money. The punishment for failure if it's private.
With a chainsaw and Citizens United.
Well, let me ask Mike. Mike, let me ask you. Again, I'm going back to the scientific method, which I believe a way people don't realize it's self-accountability. As a scientist, you have to be accountable for the methods and the methodology that you use, the theorem that you create, and the experiment that you put out there. And that's what gets peer reviewed. And if I'm correct on this, Mike, and this is my understanding of it, if that's correct, does it make sense that we use that same idea on an individual basis? That I am accountable for what I think, how I am acting in my community, what I'm offering to that community, and therefore the community, my peer review, can tell me, well, perhaps we could better use those resources, that energy, that intensity into this area versus that area. Doesn't that make sense, Mike? Or is it not tracking correctly? Am I not conveying it right?
No, I think absolutely. I mean, it's whether you're talking about science or lots of other things. I mean, and exactly what you said, it's accountability is one of the most important things. And except for the fact that nobody wants to be accountable for anything nowadays. In the perfect scenario is that we have a lot of passionate people that want to be accountable for what's going on in their communities, and they work together to change lives and to create new solutions. But unfortunately, and I think, Michael, you pointed this out before, the great majority of people are either entirely indifferent or are bystanders. They don't want to take the risks to get involved. So it winds up being very small, kind of minority fringe, groups that are activists that are willing to take action, so to speak. And the great majority of people they're the ones that make up these communities. They just are more content to sit on the sidelines and perhaps binge watch, whatever on Netflix or whatever, and don't want to get involved. And you know, in a perfect world, we'd have more people getting involved, more accountability, more people that were concerned about.
So how do we fix that? You have a lot of fans. People follow you. How are you getting people to be more involved and to care more about this? What are you doing? What's working?
Me personally,
Yeah, what's working?
I don't know. I mean, lately I have a lot of followers, but I get very little traction. So I'm probably saying a lot of things like what we're saying now, and I'm getting, silence. But I don't know. I mean, I speak from the heart, and I just share what things that I think that are important to be shared, and a lot of times they resonate with a lot of people, and it's not just about, I think very little it wants to be about just promoting myself and me. It's about how do I solve problems and help empower people to make decisions for themselves, and not be dependent on putting their blind faith into people that don't have their best interests, and promoting the
So
idea that
Mike, hold on. Mike, I have a friend that checks out accounts. Like mine is totally throttled, but I can have him look at yours and see if yours is throttled and message you back.
there we
that'd be
go.
great.
So Mike, do me a favor then. Tell me what's going on with Science Defined. Tell me what you're doing.
Yeah, so Science Define is all about this whole notion that anybody can actually understand this and research things for themselves. Because
Oh, don't
I
make
believe,
Voss right. Don't do that.
well, in this case, he is. I think. At least-
I'm clipping that. Go on.
and I think in all of this, we've seen how information can be flat out taken away from people, can be misused. We're not being able to make truly informed decisions. But I think there's a way that we can take that back by, number one, deciding to put the time into things that really matter. And I believe this is something that matters. And
Right.
and do a little bit of work to understand these things. So
Yeah.
Science Defined is about how can we make science approachable to anybody, regardless of your background, so that you can be your own best advocate. And
Got it.
whether that's doing the hard research or finding resources and people that you can rely on, that you can have confidence in, whatever that is. But we need to go from this perspective of blind faith entirely into government, into experts, into scientists and doctors in white coats, and giving our entire our full allegiance to them, and saying, okay, how do we make sense of this ourselves?
We need to.
And it's one of the biggest things is, like I've said, this barrier of the scientific terminology, the technical mumbo jumbo. I had so many
Yes.
people in my community, in fact, I'll say my friends, family members, etc., coming up to me and saying, Mike, you're a scientist, tell me what the heck this means, what.
Yeah, it's scary. It is, Mike. It's scary.
And so I
Is it
realized,
okay if I get it for a second?
I thought you were going to be quiet for like 10 minutes, Chris. What happened?
I was trying to, but I have to use the restroom.
I had a feeling. Go ahead. Go ahead. Oh, now she walks away. Did I make her angry?
oh wait, yeah, I thought she was going to say something.
Oh, that was a
not.
friendly jab.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. So keep going on, Mike. I'm sorry. What my point was, the jargon is tough. It does make us afraid sometimes. And it sometimes makes it feel like sometimes reading scientific things can make you feel stupid. Right? And people
Right.
don't want to feel stupid. It can make you feel stupid.
Right. Well, I think the way a lot of experts, scientists, they like to sound like they know what they're talking about. They like
Sure.
to sound important. So they tend to lean into utilizing that jargon, those big terms.
Right.
I would opine that the way to tell whether somebody's worth their weight in their knowledge is if any good scientist should be able to break it down, a complicated concept or whatever, into something simple that anybody should be able to understand. If somebody can only speak in big, grandiose technical jargon, but they can't actually break it down into something meaningful for anybody, then did they really understand it?
No, it's a good point. And I remember there was a strength before Neil deGrasse Tyson went crazy. He used to be that guy, right? He was that guy. If you go back 10, 20 years, he was the guy who would say, let me tell you how this cool thing worked. And he was why people, that's why he got so popular, because he could do that.
Right.
So, yeah. Kristi, go ahead. Why'd you leave us? We were sitting there waiting with bated breath.
I had to use the restroom, and I got a glass of tea. Okay,
okay.
Bill Nye the Science Guy is the biggest
go.
fucking fraud in human history. Neil deGrasse Tyson isn't far behind. I love quantum physics. I love weather. They're both crap. We need to hire people to look to. But before we do all that and look for beyond, we need to get our shit together right here. That is my opinion.
I think you're right. I completely agree. So Kristi, tell me what you're doing right now. Tell me how people can follow you.
I'm at Kristi Talmadge on Twitter. I keep my Facebook page closed. I'm thinking You're a
journalist. What are you doing?
I don't want to anger my friends on Facebook.
Oh, okay. Makes sense. Okay.
Used to be talking about politics.
Okay.
So I keep my politics and news here. I did a few practice episodes of a show called This and That. And I'm trying to build up the confidence to do it again. So I'll try.
I love it.
I'm glad to have invited here. I appreciate the discussion. I think you are all amazing.
Oh, look at that.
Thank you.
Boss, tell everybody what you're doing.
Well, one, Kristi, the best way to be able to get used to doing the shows is doing the shows. Just do it.
Not wrong.
Don't worry. People will forgive you for making mistakes because you're starting off. It ain't easy. People see me and Larry and go, you guys been doing it for 17 years. Yeah, but did you see the first one I did? Yeah, nowhere near what I'm doing now. So
you can't see the first one I did. That's gone. I erased that.
I had been asked by a bunch of people to join their shows. And I was like, no, because I looked at their profiles and I'm like, you're sketching me. And I looked at Larry Sharpe's and he was smart and good and interested.
Thank you.
So I said yes.
No, I think it's wonderful. And, and that's why I love doing this, because it's only by doing this that you get to be able to meet people like Mike, like yourself, Kristi, like Larry, who I've known for 8 years now. Good and bad days on that. Aha.
It's true.
Because I love them. And
well, I know I talked over you a few times and I apologize.
That's okay.
I meant the white Mike.
We're talking about serious issues here. Now, one of the things I've been working on, every Sunday I do a live stream. I do a live stream talking about international politics and U.S. and how they interrelate.
Is it something I can subscribe to?
Yeah. No Soundbites Allowed. That's with an I. On YouTube. Just look it up in any search engine in the world. If you're in France, you'll find it because I've tested it.
I think you're a phenomenally wonderful person. All of you on this panel are.
Yeah. Now, I do a lot of deep research, and one of the things is, here's something that I think is important. It goes right along with what we're talking about right now. It's a public service announcement. There currently is a global food crisis of 30%. Most people don't know because we're in a first world nation. So for us, that means that there's about 5, 10, 15% of shelves are empty at any given moment. We don't really feel it here. But you go to Africa, you go to most third world nations, most of South America, they're having food riots right now. That's been true. We knew that was going to happen August 2022. It takes a year before you get the next set of crops in. So once we heard that in 2022, we knew we wouldn't have that food crisis, 30% less food, meant all to this year.
And it's not something people are talking about.
No one's talking about this, but here's the problem. Here's the announcement I got to make for people to know. 2024 and 2025, it's going to continue. Because of the war in the Ukraine, because Russia has shut down the limited shipments that are coming out right now, we're going to see that food shortage increase somewhere between 40 to 50% based on all the data that's coming out from international news media. U.S. isn't covering this. You got to read BBC, Hindustan Times. You can go through the international news media. There is going to be a continuous food shortage of 40 to 50% less food, 20% less food than there is today means 25% less in the stores going forward. It means riots throughout all of Africa. It means riots in most of South America, very much part of Southeast Asia. It means higher prices.
That means your favorite
I've been
thing,
watching
Mike.
this. Michael Vasquez is right. Mike Donio, what do you have,
Yes.
Danny? I want to hear you so much because
Hold
you
on.
are so smart and
Yeah.
you don't.
Hold
interrupt
on, Mike Vass. Now you just know that more of your favorite thing is going to happen. More
Terrible.
migrants. Just what you want.
That's
There you go.
another problem, but that's a crisis. And I think, like I've been talking with Mike here, and everyone is, now you're aware. Now comes the next step. Self-accountability. Find out more. Don't take my word for it. Look at the international newspapers. Look at the reports that have just come out this weekend from the Ukraine saying the farmers aren't going to produce more food. Think about how that's going to affect prices of food. Go out, buy 10% more food don't panic, buy 10% more food, canned food, wheat, flour, every time you buy it. If I'm wrong and I don't know what I'm talking about, fantastic. You got extra food, donate it to a homeless shelter, donate it to someone in your neighborhood, a soup kitchen that have increased 25% in America. If I'm right, your family is fed, you saved yourself a bunch of money. Mike, is that the scientific method or am I wrong?
Well, it's just smart common sense based on what we've seen in terms of
You're
prices.
making him right again. I'm
rising.
never bringing you back.
Well, I have
Damn.
He's
I
great.
have a lot of mouths
Stop
to
making
feed in my
boss
house,
right.
so I pay very close attention to the rising food prices. And
Did you know this, Mike? Did you know about this?
He had a cheat sheet.
no, I've seen some things about this, but I'm saying I've seen firsthand we all have, but like the rising food prices. I have 3 kids, and so I have a lot of mouths to feed, and they're growing, and for whatever reason they want to keep eating more and more. I don't know.
You got greedy kids. They want to eat like 3 times a day and stuff. Wow.
God dang it for being hungry.
Darn it.
That's good. Sam brings up start those home gardens up. Local supply chain is great. But this goes back, I mean, we're a little bit off, but we're going back. This goes back to local, right? This goes back to this, right? Local does matter. Local people helping each other. And I'll use an odd story. When I grew up in the South Bronx, when we were kids, I lived in a big apartment building, and both my parents worked. So during the day, we would stay at one of the local people's houses, right? One of the apartments. Her name was, I still remember her name, it was Miss Sally. So we'd go to her house and we'd stay there. And what was the fee? We would always bring tons of food. Miss Sally always had food in her house for all the kids, for everybody, tons of food. That
My
was a
mother
local
lived
thing
in
we did.
Brooklyn. Do you
Yeah,
know
what
what
happened?
the fee was for babysitting me? Nothing. Did this lady babysit me, and her parents just fed me pizza and give me coins for the video game?
Yep.
And my mother did a hot dog cart. She's extremely smart. She had other things to do. But she had to bust her way for a little bit to pay the bills before she could make her way in
100%.
New York. And she was pushing a damn hot dog cart. And I had the Italian babysitter in Brooklyn. Like, how
that's the
lucky
point,
does
right?
the girl have to be?
That was localization. I think
It was
a lot of
old family.
yes, but we now look to government when we don't look to community. And I feel like that would help us in so many ways.
I agree.
Right? In so many ways, we would see what would happen and how we would begin to help each other. I really believe that's true. And I'll
That's
go to
Wes, in your community, do you feel like there are options to reach out?
You know me?
Yeah.
I have a bias. I reach out to everyone. I've been doing political commentary 17 years. I am a political target often, and rightly so. I should be. So I'm not fair. People come to me to ask me, Mike, how do we do stuff? And that's good. And just like, again, I would come to you to find out about what's going on in Connecticut, to go to Mike to find out more about virology, finding out about the latest mutation, which there's never not going to be another mutation going forward.
there's a difference level on your matter of importance and how important I am. I am nowhere near as important as you.
Oh, stop, Kristi, stop.
So
Stop. Nope. Stop.
When people ask me for help, I run right out. Well, I wanted to ask Mike Donio, and I apologize if I keep pronouncing your name wrong. But when you get involved, do you only get involved on the scientific level with your knowledge, or do you also reach out to your community? That's a hard one.
I think where I live, it's a little bit more spread out. The community.
Where do you live now?
I live now in the Midwest. I grew up in a small town in New Jersey, and it was where kind of one of those places where everybody knew everybody, and it was, and I'm Italian. So it was very much community. Everybody knew everybody. If somebody needs something, you just, oh, so and so had blah 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 blah. Okay, you run over, you help someone, whatever. But it's quite a bit different where I live now. I mean, I there's kind of neighborhoods, communities, but I don't know. It definitely doesn't have that same feel.
Yes, it's very common nowadays. There's less community now than
suburbia. It's not that way of that like city, small town where everybody, community.
There's less of it, and the sad part is in where I live in the city, it's
is your hometown the same as the same
Kristi,
that you expect?
Chill, Kristi, chill.
Sorry,
chill. No worries, chill. Where I live in the city, it's very transient. So people only live here for a year or 2 or 3. A lot of renters. So if you know somebody, 2 years from now they're gone. 3 years from now they're gone, right? Sometimes 6 months they're gone, right? So it's difficult to keep relationships with certain people. You got to find families that want to stay, and it's not as common. So go ahead, Kristi. What's your question?
Do you get banned from YouTube if I get annoyed with you yelling at me and light a cigarette?
Probably yes, but go ahead.
Now, especially Michael Donio and Michal Vass, have you seen your communities change within the last few years? And what do you think could help them?
I'll let you start, Mike. My answer is probably more controversial.
What I saw in the last couple of years in my community was a lot of people that just blindly went along with the herd with respect to the COVID stuff. And it was really sad because the kids bore the brunt of it. And they, as we've said multiple times, they were the least at risk. And but they were the most that were, I think, victimized as a result because the people just kind of, complied. As you're saying, it's about compliance, and the people by and large complied. And
absolutely,
that's what I saw a lot in my community. I had, there's pockets of parents like myself that pushed back, but and then what happened was, as soon as the stuff was dropped, they all memory hold it in mass, and it's it never happened. You're like, whoa, you can't do that.
Yes. Absolutely, yes. Then they were like, mistakes were made. What are you gonna do? Come on. That's all of a sudden. Yes. Go ahead, Voss. Tell us how you want to punish everyone. Go ahead.
Well, no, I'm the nice guy. I'm just blunt, straightforward. Hello, Marine Corps. But the answer is what I've seen in the last couple of years. We've seen more compliance, more capitulation, more forced censorship, so that would allow people to have absolute fear, so that we had in Broome County, the county executive, Jason Garnar, a personal friend of mine, coming out and saying, you're going to be entombed in your home every other day. It's basically you're in solitary confinement because of the fear. That fear then was transferred when we were finally told we could get out of the solitary confinement. It instantly transferred into a movement that said, oh, black people are oppressed. Go out and burn down your cities. And if you don't agree with either the lockdown or the mask or burning down your city, you're the bad guy, which was then followed up by Joe Biden coming on down, pressing into this progressive ideology of obedience without any thought. That if you didn't get the jab of an experimental drug into your body that has never been tested, and by the way, Mike, you can confirm this for me, there has never been a social experiment to this large a degree where an untested drug that didn't make it out of phase 1 for drug development, never has this been done where we see it on such a wide basis. And what I am seeing is compliance, fear, and oppression. And the reason why all of those things are happening, I believe, is because people are afraid to be accountable to themselves, because it means, first of all, I made a mistake. I didn't speak up and I let them push me around.
Yep.
2, I didn't get involved. I didn't vote. I didn't go out there and write to my congressman, my senator, my local council person, and tell them, stop doing this. 3, it means that we need to move forward, which means pain. It's not going to be comfortable to move forward. Yes, people who need a mask, wear a mask. Go ahead. I know people who are immunocompromised, wear the mask.
And whatnot.
But that doesn't mean that I need to get a jab. I don't need that experimental drug. I don't need to be part of that experiment because I don't trust, because they're not giving us enough information. I don't trust that they're looking out for us, because not one politician in America, right and left, I do pick on the right when they're wrong, not one of them have come out and said, oh, by the way, there's a global food crisis. You should buy 10% more food because it'll be good for your family. You'll save some money. I am very upset because this is what I am seeing, and I don't see that changing going forward in 2024 until more people hear this, share this. Am I wrong about the drug, though,
Mike? Before I bring on this one, Mike, I want to, before I have you answer, Mike, I want to reiterate what you're saying, Mike Vass, because what you said drove me crazy, because you were 100% correct. We in New York State, you watched the governor at the time, Governor Cuomo. He said, we're New York strong. Remember that lie he said? He said we were New York strong.
We're in New York putting the elderly in nursing homes and murdering them all. That is the same thing that happened in Connecticut.
That compliance and weakness was strength. It was literally 1984 double speak. Literally.
Their death numbers were high because they manipulated statistics.
So now, scientist Mike, please answer Michael Vass's question on the jab.
We need you, Mike.
It's I don't even like to call it a vaccine, but yeah, it's absolutely experimental. Was cut. A lot of corners were cut. It was not properly tested. There's a lot I can say on that, but I don't want to get Larry permanently.
Yeah, they'll cancel the channel. Yeah, and there's the problem. You're right.
Right, and that exemplifies where we are.
Yes. All right. Well, guys, I want to tell everybody who was watching, guys, if you like this, please do me a favor. If you're watching this, you enjoyed it, click that like button. You know I'm getting shadow banned for this one, so please click the like button if you could. If you're watching on Twitter, please retweet. I would appreciate it tremendously. It does help tremendously. It does. I know I keep saying it because it does matter. And please follow these guys. They were good enough to give us all this time, an hour and a half tonight. Give us some of their time. They showed us some love. Show them some love in return. Follow Mike at MV Consult. Follow the good scientist at Mike Donio, and follow Kristi at Kristi Talmadge, all on Twitter /X, whatever it is. And you can also go to the YouTube page or the Facebook page and check out all the goodies there and follow them there. Mr. Vass, you had something you want to say? Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to go to another subject, but before, if not, I want to make sure. I know one person asked directly, I think it was Patricia, who was asking about my puppy. His name is Khan, as in Genghis Khan, not from Star Trek, but the original Genghis Khan. He's a half Bichon, half Scotty. He's 12 years old, and most people think he's a puppy. It was a direct question, so I wanted to make sure I answered the
Oh, good. No. I love dogs. I'm glad you have one. Oh, good. Patty then goes on to say it was an inoculation, not a vaccine, technically. I'm not sure it was either of those things, but that's okay.
Yeah.
It's all good.
What's the difference, Mike?
Oh, is there a difference? Mike, tell us, is there a difference?
Yeah, technically. So an inoculation would be akin to what the original smallpox vaccines were, when they took the pus from the cows or the people that were sick, and exposed it to. Inoculation is very akin to the idea that homeopathy is based on exposing someone to the disease itself, or and to get them to protect against, or to manifest those symptoms, express those symptoms, so then you're protected. Whereas vaccination is raising an immune. It's just a different way of thinking, but there is a distinction between the two.
Well, let me ask one other question, Mike, because that brings up something else I think a lot of people want to ask. In the scientific community, to your knowledge, without naming names or anything like that, we know that certain terms over the last 2.5 years have had their definitions changed, especially in science. One of them being, what is the definition of a vaccine? And there has been a change in what that definition is. Is the scientific community comfortable with that, or are they pissed off about that?
From what I can tell, they seem to be pretty indifferent about it. But again, it's driven by profits mostly. So
right.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah. If where I get paid from, absolutely. Well,
Right.
guys, I think we're going to wrap it up. It's been about an hour and a half. I want to say thank you all everyone for watching. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. I'll be back on tomorrow afternoon, my WYSL Rochester radio show at 1:05 tomorrow. I'll also be on Wednesday at 7 p.m. and then an AMA Friday at 7 p.m. So I'll be on a lot this week. I will see you all